The financial impact of a cancer diagnosis can be difficult and stressful in a time when is already stressful. Ilene Shiller is the Manager of Financial and Workplace Programs at Wellspring Cancer Support Foundation, where she helps cancer patients navigate financial assistance and benefit programs through the Money Matters program and other supports and education. Ilene is joining us tonight to discuss some income replacement options and other financial resources which may be available to cancer patients who are unable to work or are in need of financial assistance during treatment. Welcome, Ilene, and I'll turn it over to you.
Wonderful. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. And what I'm going to do is take you through the various programs that might be available to you, various research, that type of thing, just so you get an idea of what your options might be. Okay. And what I always like to do when I start these presentations is a little bit of the research, so that you get a sense that if you are having financial stress as a result of your cancer diagnosis, you are not alone. And there is a lot of research out there to support this. So basically, in the oncology world now, there's a term, financial toxicity, which really recognizes the financial distress that a cancer diagnosis can bring about. One particular study that you'll see highlighted on this slide looked at patients across 20 different cancer centers in different provinces in Canada, and it asked a bunch of different questions. A lot of different data was compiled, but as you can see, large numbers in terms of those that reported. 40% of individuals indicated experiencing financial struggles, and of course that resulting emotional distress. And then of those numbers, it was a high level of financial burden for 33% of patients, and understandably, the burden was more difficult for those with lower household incomes. What causes that financial hardship? So the big one is lost income. As we know, often with many types of treatment, the patient has to stop working. So there's that lost income stream. And sometimes there's also another household member acting as the caregiver who also may have to stop working, a second loss of income stream. And then this is just an example of the many costs that may impact households impacted by cancer: out-of-pocket drug costs, medical supplies, alternative and complementary treatments, transportation. We all know what it costs to park at a hospital, accommodation costs, childcare, and I think this list could go on and on. So what I thought I'd take you through today are the three areas that I like to concentrate on when I sit down or am on Zoom or on the phone with a patient trying to help them with their financial situation. So there are three key areas that we focus in on. Number one is income replacement programs. So what's going to take the place of that biweekly or weekly or monthly paycheck? And that's number one. Number two, what's out there that might be available to help with the medical expenses? And then number three, what might be available in terms of helping out with household and other expenses, so unrelated to treatment. Start off with focusing on the big one, which are the income replacement programs. And as you'll see on the next slide, I like to divide them into 4 quadrants. This is what I call my grid, and it's sort of my home for sort of figuring out a plan for somebody that comes to the Money Matters program. So you'll look in each section. Number one, top left, financially tested. So those are the programs that before even looking at the level of illness, treatment plan, anything of that nature, the program is going to look at the patient's financial situation to see if they qualify. On the top right, we have our contribution-based programs. So those are programs that you contribute to on your paycheck, or if you're self-employed, through your tax return. There are workplace programs. So when you flip through your benefits booklet, some disability type programs might be available through your work. And then personal resources. So these are insurance policies, assets that are personal to you. Go and turn through each of the sections. So financially tested programs, those are our social assistance programs, and those are going to vary province to province. Our contribution-based programs consist of employment insurance, sickness benefits, and Canada Pension Plan disability benefits. In the workplace programs category, we'll take a quick look at short-term and long-term disability, and then personal resources. So those, again, are the assets and insurance that you may have. So let's go into each one individually. So first of all, the social assistance programs. Oh, sorry, no, we're going to start on contribution-based programs on the next slide. So the top right-hand quadrant, and I like to start with employment insurance sickness benefits because those are often the benefits that people access first when they stop working. So what's involved in applying for employment insurance sickness benefits? So the first thing you'll see is on the next slide, the eligibility requirements. So number one, you have to be medically unable to work. With EI sickness benefits, there is not any particular threshold or definition of illness or disability, which is a good thing. So it's easy to qualify from a medical perspective. Particular to the EI program, they're going to look and see that you've worked 600 hours in the past year. So those are going to be insurable hours. So again, when you look at your paycheck, you'll see that you've contributed to EI. And again, what they're looking for is 600 hours. It's a fairly simple online application, doesn't take too long to fill out. And you have to file with it, again, a very simple one-page medical certificate. It just has to have the date patient stopped working and the anticipated date of returning to work. It doesn't even have to list what the illness is. And then when you take a sick leave from work, your employer fills out and files with the government a record of employment indicating that you're on a sick leave. Slide. How much do EI sickness benefits pay? 55% of your average weekly earnings, and they're going to max out at $650 per week. EI benefits are taxable. In terms of when you'll get paid, there's a 1 week waiting period where you won't receive any funds. And then you'll typically get your first payment within about maybe 4 to 6 weeks, and they'll pay you back to the second week after you stopped working. A good thing is, a few months back, the timing for EI sickness benefits increased, and they are now payable for up to 26 weeks, which is really good. Other contribution-based program, and again, this is something people often will access in combination with employment insurance sickness benefits, and that's our Canada Pension Plan disability benefits program. And the first thing I like to say with this program is, and it's probably one of the number one questions I'm asked, if you access Canada Pension Plan disability benefits programs, benefits, you will not be affecting or impacting what you're going to get from CPP retirement when you retire and start, well, not necessarily retire, but when you start collecting your CPP retirement. So think of them as being in two separate pots of money. Next slide. So CPP disability has a two-pronged eligibility requirement. Number one, you have to have contributed to Canada Pension Plan in 4 of the last 6 years. Keep in mind, that's not a hard and fast rule. There are some exceptions. The best thing you can do is order a statement of contributions from Service Canada. So that's number one. And keep in mind, if you're self-employed, depending on how you structure your self-employment business, you may actually be contributing to CPP through your tax return. Okay, so number one is the contributions. Number two is you have to meet Canada Pension Plan's definition of disability. And as you'll see on the next slide, it's got 2 prongs to what comprises a disability. So it's got to be a mental or physical disability that, one, it's got to be severe, and number 2, prolonged. And what severe means is you're unable to do any type of gainful employment. So it's not tied to your own particular career and job. It's a little bit of a broader concept, and they're looking at your ability to do sort of gainful employment. Number two is it's got to be prolonged. So no magic definition for this, but they're looking for something that's of sort of prolonged and indefinite duration. So no particular time frame in mind, but something that's really indefinite, where the medical team is just unsure when the person will return to work. I always like to err on the side of, if it's not really known how long you'll be in treatment, no harm in putting an application in. So that's always been my approach. The application process, not a particularly pleasant one. So you can do it online. I'm not a huge fan of the online version, or there is a PDF, a paper application that you can fill out. So one part is for the patient, and then there's a detailed medical report that the doctor fills out. In terms of getting a decision, ovarian cancer is on a list of illnesses that get a quicker review. So you will get a decision within 30 calendar days, but I highlight in brackets, not payment. There's a 4-month waiting period for Canada Pension Plan Disability's first payment. So again, a quick decision, but not necessarily a quick check from them. CPP disability pays. The maximum you can get on a monthly basis is about $1,500. The average in 2023 has been about $1,100 per month. If you have kids under 18 or kids 18 to 24 in full-time school and you're approved for CPP disability, you'll get an extra $281.72 each month. We're going to move to the top left now. So again, those are our financially tested programs, and they are the social assistance programs. And I put them in a general category because, as I mentioned, those are provincial programs. And so they're going to vary from province to province. And you'll see in a couple of slides, I've listed them all for you so that you can look them up based on, what province you're in. So let me tell you on the next slide, just some general things about the programs. The programs call themselves the income programs of last resort because they basically want you to go and look for every other source of income to approach that program. So that's why they sort of term themselves that way. And they're also needs-based, meaning, again, before they look at any level of illness, they're going to focus on your financial situation. And they're going to, in particular, look at household income and assets. And I'll give you just an example. If you're in Ontario, we have our Ontario Disability Support Program. And so when you do your financial intake, they're looking for your household income to be below a certain level. There's a whole formula, but basically it's got to be around under $45,000 a year. And then they look at your liquid assets. So your money in the bank, any investments you might have, RRSPs, not your home, not your cars, and they would have to be under 40,000 if you're single and 50,000 for a couple. With social assistance programs, you'll find the more temporary emergency programs. And that would be in Ontario, for example, Ontario Works. And then you have the Companion Disability Program. And again, as an example, Ontario Disability Support Program. And with the social assistance programs, you'll get the financial benefit, but you may also get additional benefits, some drug coverage, some help with finding work. There might be money to get to and from medical appointments, other disability related needs. And so you'll see on the next two slides, just very quickly, a list of the programs in different provinces, which I believe they're distributing the materials. You'll have it, so you'll be able to look up and do some research and see if those programs might apply to you. And then we're going to move to the next quadrant, which is our workplace programs. So this is where you're going to have short-term and long-term disability. So I'll tell you quickly about them. What I always say with these programs, and you'll see on the next slide, they are unique contracts. So a lot of similarities between these programs, but always good to check your benefits booklet to see maybe you're going to have something that's a little different from the norm. So short-term disability can really vary in what it looks like. It can pay any ranges I've seen anywhere from 60 to 100% of your pay. And it can also vary in length. So I've seen some as short as 6 weeks. I've seen some as long as a year. I've actually seen recently one that lasted 2 years. With short-term disability, it may be paid by your employer, in which case it's going to look like a regular paycheck, just a lesser amount often, or it may be an insurance company that's cutting the check. With long-term disability, again, also a unique contract. When you're in an employment situation, you're looking at a group policy, but if you're self-employed, or even if you're employed and wanted to supplement, you may have a private policy. With long-term disability, it starts after what they call an elimination period or a waiting period, and it pays a percentage of your salary. It may be a flat percentage, like 67%. It may be a formula, so 50% of the first 3,000 and then, 40% of the rest. So again, you really got to check your booklet. And based on who pays the premiums, long-term disability can be taxable or tax-free. And then you're into your personal resources. So again, these are going to be the things that are personal to you. And on the next slide, you'll see some examples. So do you have your own private long-term disability policy? Did you take out a critical illness insurance policy? Always check your mortgage, your loans, your lines of credit, your credit cards to see if perhaps you have disability insurance on those instruments. And again, unfortunately, sometimes people have to access their savings or cash in their RRSPs, maybe refinance their home. And with those type of things, I really, really encourage people to speak to a financial advisor just to make sure that, if they are in need of funds, that they're doing it in sort of the most tax effective way that sort of preserves retirement savings, things like that. We're going to move now from income replacement over to treatment related expenses. And the very first thing that's always good to check that you have in place or what you have in place is drug coverage. And so with drug coverage, the first thing to check is to see, what you may have through work. So a lot of workplaces will have group insurance benefit plans. Perhaps if your work doesn't, you've taken out a private benefit plan. And if not, you're then going to want to look and see what provincial drug benefit programs might be available. So for using Ontario as an example, we have our Trillium drug program. We have a program for children under 24 and under, and we have a seniors drug program and a few other programs. So again, that's a good starting place if you don't have a benefit plan. Now, with some medical medicines, sometimes the manufacturer of the drug themselves may have some program, some compassionate assistance that will supplement insurance or provincial coverage. What's good is a lot of medical centers now, a lot of cancer centers have what they call drug access navigators or medication reimbursement specialists that can help you sort of navigate through all the different drug programs. So the next one, transportation. So that's something, sorry, one slide back. Yep. That's something, I think that everybody is hit with because of the cost of parking at the hospitals, the cost of gas going to and from. So again, first thing, a good thing to check with in your province is the Canadian Cancer Society. So in many provinces, they have their Wheels of Hope program. So you pay a one-time registration fee and you have access to volunteer drivers. If you don't have that, then You can always try and access, if it's a lower income household, their travel treatment fund that's available in a few different provinces. Check into the public paratransit service. So the accessible transit, that might be a cheaper transportation method, and good if you don't have, people available from time to time to help you with treatment. Community organizations, medical transportation services, see what might be available in your area. Sometimes there are free volunteer driver services. I know, for example, in Hamilton, Ontario, there's the Cancer Assistance Program. Otherwise, there might be medical transportation services that charge a per kilometer rate. If you have to park at the hospital, see if you can buy discount passes. That always helps. And accessible parking permits. I know that in Toronto, in some areas, they let you park and not put money in the meter. So please check your local rules to, see what applies in your area. But again, that could be a potential cost savings. And then other things to look for, if you need some sort of assistive devices, oxygen therapy or mobility advices, see what the province offers, see if there are any community organizations that might have lending programs or donation programs. Check your provincial home care service to see what might be available if you need, a personal support worker to come in, or an occupational therapist to assess, safety features in your home. Are there dental programs that might be available if you're a lower income household? In Ontario, we have a recent one added for seniors. You may also have clinics, even teaching hospitals that offer lower cost dental services. Pick up the phone or use their online chat for the Canadian Cancer Society. They have phenomenal information specialists that have a directory of all different types of resources. But look out for other community organizations local to you that may also be able to help with, again, medical equipment, transportation, that type of thing. So I'm not going to give you a whole tax lesson, but I want to just mention 2 tax credits that it's important to look into if you have someone in your household that does have a tax bill at the end of the year, because the first and the second one I'm going to they call non-refundable tax credits. So what that means is they're used to reduce tax payable on your income tax return. So if I owe $500 and my medical expense tax credit is worth $500, I don't have to pay tax. So it's a good thing to have. For the medical expense tax credit, the amount of your medical expenses has to exceed a certain threshold for you to be able to use it. So again, you can get information, from your tax preparer or your accountant, or they actually have a pretty good website. And I'll show you on the next slide. If you go to the medical expense tax credit website, there's a really good search function where you can put in your medical expense and see if it's eligible. And I just gave you a very, very small subset of some eligible and not eligible medical expenses. And the 2 that I really want to highlight to you is if you are traveling over 40 kilometers each way to your medical services, there's a per kilometer rate that you may be able to claim. And similarly, if you travel over 80 kilometers, you may be able to also claim your parking and accommodation costs. So again, very important thing to look in if you have someone, again, in your household who has a tax bill at the end of the year. Another non-refundable tax credit is the disability tax credit. And this one, again, very helpful, but very high threshold of disability. So as you can see, you either have to be blind, markedly restricted in at least one basic activity of daily living, or significantly restricted in 2 or more, or you have to need life-sustaining therapy. And cancer treatments are not considered life-sustaining therapy. Life-sustaining therapy are things like dialysis, for example. And so you'll see in terms of the basic activities of daily living on the next slide, we're talking speaking, hearing, walking, elimination, feeding, dressing, and mental functions. It's got to be a medical condition that's prolonged, so it's got to last at least a year. There's a certificate that the doctor fills out. My approach with it is, I don't really give an opinion. I don't think, we really know what's going to qualify. And I think the best thing is to discuss it with your doctor, bring them the disability tax credit certificate that they need to fill out, and let them advise you as to whether they think you would qualify. And then what I want to just quickly close off with are the last category, which is resources for household and other expenses. And so I'll just give you some suggestions here for rent that is in arrears. Most cities or municipalities will have some form of housing stabilization funds, and those are geared towards rental arrears. So a good thing is to go to the website of the municipality in which you live. If you are, somebody that, the rental arrears just are there every month, look into subsidized housing. I know in the GTA, the wait lists are absolutely crazy. There may be a rent bank available through the municipality where it's an interest-free loan to help you with rent. Similarly, look for utility arrear programs. The housing stabilization funds will help with that as well. In Ontario, we have, for those with a low income, an energy assistance program and a way to lower your electricity bill through our Ontario electricity support program. So look for electricity, gas, and water bill relief programs. And then some just other examples, food banks, they're there to help with the cost of groceries right now. It's not a bad idea to use them to get some staples, to get some, canned goods. It can really, really help with the cost of food. If you own a home, see if there are any property tax relief programs. They won't, sort of exempt you from paying property tax, but they may defer an increase. So that's one thing to look into. See if there are, if housing again is an issue, see if we have in Ontario housing help centers that help you with subsidized housing, but also help you look for market rent housing that might be a little bit less expensive. Credit counselors are a really good resource. They are very different from trustees in bankruptcy. Credit counselors, they are nonprofit agencies that help people with budgeting and with debt management. So they're really, really good if you're dealing with a lot of credit card debt, that type of thing. And then just to finish off, if you dial 211 or do 211, whatever your province is, you will have a directory of all different types of health and social service agencies. 311 will get you the services for your municipal government. And look into all different community agencies that might be available. Again, there are agencies out there that might help, that might have some small funds to help with an overdue rent payment, an overdue bill. If your issue, is maybe you've been turned down for Ontario disability or some other disability program, or you're having trouble with your landlord, there's legal aid. There are community legal clinics that don't charge if you are below a certain income threshold. So another very helpful resource. Are a few, cancer charities that are out there. Again, look for things in your, community. Shine Through the Rain helps with overdue rent and utilities. Melanie's Way helps women with metastatic and advanced cancers come up with, some type of wish, as does Angels Anonymous is another program like that. So again, Google is your friend. If schooling costs are an issue, look into through the government loans, repayment assistance programs. There are sometimes disability bursaries available through the government and through schools. And I've given you a name of a couple of scholarships for people who have had cancer that they may be able to access. again, just my closing thoughts, save for a rainy day. I know it's easier said than done. They used to say 3 months of expenses, but with the way things are right now, 3 to 6 is sort of the target. There's so many tools online now to help with budgeting. If that would be of assistance to you, the Government of Canada even has a really good budgeting tool. Insurance, hard to get if you have a pre-existing condition, but let family members know about insurance. See if, a number of years post-diagnosis and treatment, you might be able to get insurance in place. And no matter what age you are, wills and powers of attorney are just so very important to make sure your wishes are honored. Anyways, it's very hard. I've talked to you about so many different programs. Everybody has different circumstances. It can be very, very challenging to navigate. If you are in Ontario or Alberta, you are more than welcome to reach out to the Money Matters program. If not, your hospital social worker is a great source of information for all these types of programs. If you want to contact us in Ontario or Alberta, you have her contact information. So sorry I've gone over 3 minutes, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Eileen, for the great information there. We also had a few people putting some great tips and comments in the chat. I know Krista from Winnipeg said too, if you've had an ostomy for over a year, then you should be eligible for the disability tax credit. So some great info there as well. And this is one time when Google is your friend, as you said. So we do have a few questions, Eileen.
Sure.
So first one, do these programs raise the income thresholds annually along with the cost of living increases? Or if not, when was the last time those income thresholds were updated?
Okay, so I can only speak. So in terms of the amounts that they pay, programs like CPP, disability, employment insurance, they'll increase the amounts they pay based on cost of living on an annual basis. The social assistance programs, they don't raise the thresholds in terms of how to qualify. They may raise the amounts based on the cost of living, but not always. Ontario Works hasn't had a rise in rates in a while, whereas Ontario Disability, for example, had an increase this past summer. So again, the eligibility requirements likely will stay static, and it's just in terms of whether the payments amounts will go up or not on the provincial level, not always.
Okay. Thank you. Another one here, this is kind of a comment with the question. This lady was like, wow, I pay Blue Cross now that I'm retired. And does that mean that I can deduct it as a medical expense on my income tax?
So again, it's not a deduction, but it can be if you pay the premiums for a private insurance thing, it is an eligible medical expense that you're going to put on your tax return, just like your prescription receipts. Again, if it all adds up to a certain amount, then it may trigger the credit. So yes, it is something that is eligible to be put on. Whether it's going to end up, being of benefit is just going to matter in terms of the numbers on the tax return. So again, always good to speak to a tax preparer about that, but yes, it is an eligible medical expense.
Okay, great, thank you. And another question, which I think you touched on in your presentation, but I'm going to ask it again just for to update everyone. Are there programs out there that can help with childcare costs while I'm at chemotherapy?
So if you're on a social assistance program, you can always ask your worker if there might be some funds available. There are sometimes community programs that help out. In Ontario, we have a phenomenal organization called Nankind, and they provide a few hours of childcare here and there. So again, Google, ask the hospital social worker, but in Ontario,
yeah, social workers are excellent resources for financial assistance for your particular province and where you're at, and they will have a handle on all of the different programs available. And just one other comment that was in the chat that I just wanted to mention, a woman from Calgary said that she found a dental practice that was students, and they
Yeah.
offer free sessions, so the students can learn how to do x-rays and clean teeth. So there are lots of great programs out there. Like you said, you just have to do a little research to